Who are you without your family? How would your life look like if you weren't trying to get validation from your own family? Do you have free will when you try so hard to bend your reality to match what others expect of you? When I moved back home at 26, I didn't know that I would be confronted with a big challenge, dismantling the validation I was chasing from my own family and in turn, rewrite how I define myself. I have always been someone who didn't really care about how others perceived me, but I somehow did care about how my own family perceived me. I allowed them to hold a leash on my neck and decide my own life, and I lived that way without a problem really for a very long time. The curtain fell when I decided I wanted to live differently when I left the supposed paradise that is abroad for a life in the village, back in my parents' house in my late 20s. This was not only unexpected, but also considered the biggest sin I could have committed. I mean, even my own clothes had been given away because they couldn't fathom that I could come back. For what? The only acceptable path for me was to go out there, get a big salary job, get married, and forgotten. But I had different plans for myself. I wanted to live as a human being, and that was the beginning of me starting a new journey. One that meant that I had to stop caring about what anyone, including my family, thinks about me and my life. I didn't choose my siblings. This is a thought I had someday, and that was somewhat liberating, especially as a firstborn daughter. This idea that I'm responsible for how my siblings turn out because of the choices I make is something that I am unlearning. It is a lot of pressure to live like this, actually. I just find it so interesting how we not only not choose our siblings or even parents, I mean, maybe those who believe in reincarnation might say otherwise, but also even when you have the same biological parents, every child experiences them differently, which means that we don't even have the same parents. The way parents treat their firstborns is different from how they treat lastborns. Parents constantly change their outlook on life as the years go by, and that's why there are many times where you'll find that children who grew up in the same house have very different views of their own parents. One child may say their father is the best in the world, and another sibling may want nothing to do with the same father. In addition, because of societal expectations and prescriptions, some parents prefer to have male children, and if you're born in such a family as a girl, you'll be treated differently. It's even worse when you are the last born in a huge family of other girls. Because your parents were searching for a boy, your entire life you'll be treated as unwanted, as if you killed their dreams. I have always found it so interesting that the closeness of a family unit is determined by the mindset of the parents. If they focus on comparing one sibling to another, you grow up to become strangers. If they focus on trying to force you into a certain box, you end up becoming a two-faced person, not by choice but by circumstance, for survival. You have to play a different role at home and maybe be yourself when you're far away from them, which creates an interesting situation because you know your own family wouldn't accept you for who you are, and the only way to keep them in your life is to play the role they like while you remain a total stranger to them. Unfortunately, this is the reality for many people, and that's exactly why moving back to your parents' house as an adult is frowned upon, because subconsciously, many really hate being around their parents, and so they project their own feelings and thoughts without knowing that they are actually confessing that they have parents, but their parents aren't home to them. In such a case, what's really the point of family when the same family is obsessed with cutting your wings so that you don't fly as high? Something quite tragic has been happening in my village. A lot of young men have been taking their own lives, and almost every other week there's a burial, but somehow no one is sounding the alarm about this. This boils down to something I spoke about a while ago as I started this channel, and it is this idea that many parents, especially African parents, have, where they would rather have a dead child than one that is considered a failure. It is unfortunate, but the reality for many is that they are weighed down by expectations from their family members, and sometimes they are pushed so hard that they choose to take their own lives. Why is success so important than the actual lives of people? Why are we expected to just suck it up and do everything we need to do to be successful in the eyes of society, whether it's getting a job or getting married, even when we are drowning? Why is it not acceptable to just be, even for a little while, to have space to write the lives we want to live? I have seen so many examples in my own family of people who have lived the lives that were written for them by their own families, by society, and the misery that they carry is something that is incredibly pitiful. But what I find the most tragic is that they know it, but they refuse to acknowledge it, and they try to push everyone around them to make the same decisions as they did. And when you refuse, they will do everything possible to remind you how much of a horrible human being you are for not wanting to suffer like them. I'm feeling so exhausted today because I didn't sleep well. And I didn't sleep well because I was asleep and then someone decided to eat in the middle of the night. Was it 1 a.m.? And then they were banging doors left, right, center. And one thing about me, when someone disturbs my sleep, it's really hard for me to go back to sleeping. And that's exactly what happened. So I lost sleep from like 1 a.m. and I went back to sleep at like 5 a.m. And this is one of those things that I really hate about staying at home, because it means having such situations recurring over and over. And even when you tell the person to stop banging doors at night at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., they don't listen, because they think I'm overreacting. You know, this is one of those reasons why I talk about the patriarchy so much, because for me, I've grown up experiencing casual misogyny even in my own home. And it's just small things like that, telling people that they're inconveniencing you, but they don't listen to you. And then they'll make you feel like you are crazy for pointing out the things that they're doing. It's not just banging doors, it's also listening to things on phone on super high volume at night. And you try to tell someone and then they pretend that you're crazy. Oh my God, I wasn't doing that. I wasn't speaking to someone loudly and laughing for the entire village to hear. You must be crazy. Hearing such things over and over, or in the morning and you're having breakfast and the TV is on very high volume, and then they're also taking their phone to watch things on high volume. You have to constantly tell them, but they don't listen. Oh, I am just exhausted. This is one of those things, you know, that's really causes you a lot of mental stress. It's such small things. And at times I think, ça c'est le prix de payer for, you know, coming back home in my adult years, and now you're living with other adults and their own behaviors, and just seeing how self-centered they are. I think it makes me feel some type of way, because I was brought up to always be in service of others, to always think about other people, to always be considerate of people. But now you're living with people who were brought up to think that, you know, no one can tell them anything, you know, boys will be boys. And you're seeing the consequences of that, how inconsiderate they are, how they don't even listen to anything. All these things are really so exhausting. And lately, actually, I've been just feeling exhausted, and it's this I would say it's microaggressions that stems from casual misogyny. You know, at the end of the day, this is some of the things that you experience when you're living with people. I've been someone that has been independent for quite a long time, actually. I went to boarding school when I was 10, and then after school, after university, I lived on my own. I moved to an entire new country on my own and lived independently. So it has really been an adjustment to just come back and live other human beings, and having to remind them over and over that because they are living with other human beings, they need to be considerate of how their actions are affecting others. It is okay for you to act however you want if you're living independently in your own house, but when you're living with people, you can't do things however you want, especially when you are affecting the quality of life of other people. And the fact that if you're the kind of person that points out these kinds of things, you're the one that is labeled crazy, is absolutely crazy. But anyway, today I just want to rest. Thankfully, I am home alone today. It's a breath of fresh air. My goodness. I can't even remember the last time this happened, and I just want to rest. I want to eat good food, to practice a little bit of Chinese, because I decided to continue with learning Chinese. I literally cannot even have a break. Every single time it's people just making a lot of noise. I'm kind of just over being in this village. I think it's really time for me to leave, because I'm just exhausted. The sun is shining so beautifully, and the evening sun, it always gives darker skin such a nice glow. I'm just basking in it and enjoying it and getting my dose of vitamin D. It's been a couple of weeks now that I've been thinking about family. What does family mean? I've thought about it from a political perspective mostly, but I think also about how family defines who you are and defines the things that you end up doing in life. For example, when you look at this channel, I speak a lot about the patriarchy, and that has been really influenced because of the family structure, I would say, or societal structure as a whole that I grew up in. Because when I speak about family, I'm not just talking about the immediate family, because in the African context, it also includes the extended family, your cousins, your uncles, your aunties. It's not just about your parents and siblings. And even the extended family has a huge impact on you because they also contribute in giving opinions about how you should live your life. And I think it's so interesting how this really small unit influences your entire life. And in fact, what I've always found so interesting, especially when you study psychology, is that most of the times when you do not work on the things that you don't like about your family, you will end up replicating that in your own life, because you will go ahead and look for people that mirror those qualities that you may not like, but you don't know because it is in your subconscious, whether it's in your friends, whether it is in your romantic relationships. And I find that to be deeply scary, because most times you're finding a lot of people who don't like their own families being like, oh, I can't wait to leave this place. And they find themselves just choosing people that are even worse, and they find themselves in another prison. And it's sort of like you can't really run away from your family unless you really learn to deconstruct your own family, to start seeing people in that family unit. My goodness, I'm saying family way too much. Seeing people around you as human beings and not as these little gods who are in control of everything, that you listen to everything they're telling you and you think that everything they say is fact and you take it to heart. And I think learning to really deconstruct the family unit, to learn to see them as human beings, has really helped me. Because when it really comes to being a human being, it means that you're not always correct. It means that you most times don't even know what you're doing yourself. So you really don't have to listen to what this other person is telling you, especially when you can see that they do not even know what they're doing with their own life. But if you're not able to really sit down with yourself and remove yourself and probably, look at things from a bird's eye view and try to see everything with clear eyes or with different eyes, then you're always going to be a prisoner of your own family. And unfortunately, a lot of people live like this. In fact, what I've always found so interesting is that a lot of people worship their families. They literally cannot do anything that goes against what their families think. And in such an instance, you find these same people are also religious people. I think it's so interesting, because what if God speaks to you and tells you to do something that your family is against? Are you going to go against your family and listen to what God is telling you, or are you going to please your family? It would mean that you actually worship your family. You don't worship God, because you would rather do what your family says is right than listen to what God is telling you. And even when it comes to religion and God, I mean, do you believe in God because that is what you want to believe in? Do you follow a certain religion because that is what you want, or it's because that is what your family wants? And of course, it's not just religion, it also comes to career. It also comes to the people you're getting married to. I know there's some families where people are told, you should never bring someone from a certain tribe into this family. And I think it's quite interesting. Can you fully live a life of your own when you're not able to separate yourself from your own family, or you're not able to make your own independent decisions without really caring about what your family thinks, whether they're going to support you or not? And if you look at the intersection of family and politics, it gets more interesting. And actually, politics is one of my favorite things to think about. I should become a politician, but I do not want problems. Actually, one of the things that really amazes me about politics is that whatever you are seeing in that sphere is actually not being driven by politics itself. Most of the times, the tenets of politics, the foundation of politics, actually starts at an individual level, which is largely influenced by family and society, but more so family. This is why you always see that a lot of patriarchal political people are so obsessed with this idea of family values. Why? Because At the end of the day, the patriarchal family unit lays the foundation for patriarchal governance. It is in the home where children are taught not to question authority, not to ask questions. When a parent tells you or when an adult tells you something, you don't question them, you just follow because the adult is older and it is assumed that they know better, even when most times they actually don't. It is at home, especially in a lot of African families, where the parents don't apologize, they don't take accountability for anything, even when they're in the wrong. And we see this on a larger scale playing out in our politics, because we have politicians, we have leaders who never want to take accountability for anything. It's always blame game. They engage in corruption, but no one is ever held accountable, because these are things that you're taught from the home. Leaders are never really supposed to be held accountable. That's one of the tenets of patriarchal governance. And this is just one of those things that I find incredibly fascinating, because a lot of people are very much focused on trying to dismantle what is happening in politics, when really what is happening in politics has the foundation of what's happening in the home. And if you want to change society, you have to start from your own homes. And that's much harder, because it means dismantling tradition, it means dismantling culture, and that's much harder because it is in the subconscious, it is in the generational DNA, so to speak. You want change in society, but you yourself, you do not want to become the change that you want to see, because yes, change is very hard, and most especially when you're the kind of person that is always seeking validation from their family. Changing to become something that will probably be against what your family approves, a lot of people don't want to do that. Change to create a society that is equal for everyone, it means that a lot of people need to leave behind whatever they call culture and tradition. That needs a lot of courage, because it means that first and foremost you're going to be alienated by the people you call family. Are you ready for that? If you're not ready for that, then say goodbye to the change that you want, because that change is not coming unless it comes from you. Anyway, this is not something to have a conversation for one day. It's something that needs to be constantly, not just in conversation, but also in action. At the end of the day, action is what brings change. Recently, while reading the dictionary, I came across a very interesting word, cerebration. I didn't think there was a word for thinking, the act of thinking. Apparently, actually a legit hobby. So yeah, I am just gonna go back to celebrating about this. I feel so vindicated now that I found this word. Yeah, all those people who keep on telling me that, oh my god, you think everything is too deep. Obviously, I think everything is too deep. When I look at something, I can see all the roots that are holding something up. So of course, everything is that deep. I feel so vindicated that I have a word for my favorite hobby, which is thinking, celebrating. So yeah, I'm gonna leave you to your day, to your week. I hope you have a wonderful one, and I hope that in this era of ChatGPT, you pick up my favorite hobby of celebrating.